Thank you very much for welcoming me. I want us to give a big round of applause for Gig Hubs and Alpha Tech. Let us give it up to them. Well, my name is Emeka Okoye. I'm the CEO of GTI Group. I'm sorry, he said systems. I am an architect, actually a real architect. Because today everybody is talking about architect in the digital economy. I am an American from Nigerian origin, and I live in Valencia. It's a beautiful city. I'm going to talk about the emerging markets and the impact of the fourth industrial revolution that we all are seeing. All of us are part of the fourth industrial revolution. I hope you understand that the digital economy is driving the revolution. So you are revolutionists. We're going to give you just a few information about emerging economies of Africa. The impact of what you're doing on Africa and Europe, and how there is the symbiosis between Africa's economy and Europe. So you get a few data. But the most important thing is people are talking about mobile connectivity, blockchain, artificial intelligence, big data. The number one value that everybody sees Africa is about gold, oil, minerals. But the real value, the top value today in Africa is Africa's data. How many of you believe that? 1, 2, 3, 4, a few. Let me share this with you. The new economy, the new global economy, the digital economy runs on data. Now, somebody getting something? Everything we do is going to be managed by artificial intelligence. And artificial intelligence don't have any intelligence. It can only work with data. And the data of the whole world is somewhere in the cloud, in Google, Microsoft. All these companies have data, your data, the French data, the American data. But Africa's data is nowhere. So 1.2 billion people, an economy of $1.3 trillion has no data available. When a product is rare, its value goes up, correct? Correct? If something is in demand and there is very few of it, the value is high. When a product is in demand and it doesn't exist, the priceless. So Africa's data is the real gold. If you're a CTO and you're not considering Africa, my hope is that after this presentation, you create an Africa unit in your organization. Any company that has no Africa plan in the next 10 years will be asking their CEO and the CTO, where were you when there was a mad rush for Africa? The true economic situation of the West and its comparative analysis with the African rising stars. Do you know that among the top 10 economies, the top 10 fastest growing economies in the world, 5 of them are in Africa? Anybody understand? I know you all are about coding, programming, developing, but this is a little bit diversity to make you think out of the box. My hope is to do a paradigm shift in the CTO Summit, because anybody that thinks according to the status quo do not belong to this new revolution. Correct? Correct? Everybody here, you're here because somebody years behind started thinking out of the box. Today, thinking out of the box is trending. Now, the CTO of every company is the chief architect of the future of that company, correct? Correct? Because you are talking today, I saw the guy from ING talking about finance information architect, domain architect, security architect. And I'm the architect that design houses. But in the new economy, we're talking about architecture. And if somebody walked in here, they would think those guys studied architecture in the university. But really, it's a new world, so a new paradigm shift. Now, let us look at this slide. This is an attempt to open the minds of Europeans, Africans, and their leaders at the new paradigm shift to present the economic reality of the Western countries and the present opportunities that lies in Africa. If you don't have numbers, you wouldn't understand what I'm saying. So I'm sharing a few data today to give us an idea what blockchain, artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, and big data can do in Africa. You will learn that solving the problem of Africa's economy are opportunities that bring in wealth. Whenever there is a problem and you find a solution to it, people are going to pay you money for it, correct? Is that correct? I hope everybody understands me. There is a problem in electricity. If I invent electricity using solar, and Africa has a lot of sun, I will make a lot of money, correct? Yeah, you're right. So all the problems that Africa presents are opportunities that you need to think about in your boardrooms. When you start solving these problems using technology, you are making a lot of money. I think at this point, I'll throw one, I don't like giving name of companies, but I'll throw one thing that you guys go research. How many of you have heard a company called Andela? Very few. What made Mark Zuckerberg go to Lagos, in the very remote part of Lagos, and invest $20 million is a young Nigerian who was programming and doing things that would change the whole of Africa. And Mark Zuckerberg, 2 years ago, identified him, put $20 million. Google Andela today. It's in many African countries. That is thinking out of the box. The president of Nigeria didn't even know about this young man, while Mark Zuckerberg across the world identified this young man and put money, and that organization has become a major player in the African digital economy. There are hundreds of Andela potentials all over. And you, the CTOs in Europe, has a greater advantage because Africa is your neighbor. And if you want it or not, we all share one global village. And in this global village is the survival of the fittest. In the African savannah, the lion wakes up in the morning and the antelope wakes up the same morning. The weakest antelope must outrun the fastest lion to survive. The fastest lion must outrun the weakest antelope to survive. So whether we Africans or Europeans like it or not, we need each other. And when we form a good alliance, we have the opportunity and the potential to create the biggest, strongest economic bloc in the whole world. Africa has all the resources that the whole world needs. The population of Africa is 1.2 billion people. 70% of these people are under the age of 40. Between 25 and 40 is your productive years, when your brain is cranking out ideas and innovation. Africans by nature are intuitive people. Europeans process systems and procedures. So if we connect these two things, you have an incredible amount of potential to compete on the global world. How many of you know that Asia now is close to 2 billion people? And who controls Asia? Is it the Spanish companies? Is it the German companies? China and who? India. Now, we Africans are your neighbors. The Europeans have advanced technology. The Africans have the human resource, the market, the resources, the minerals. Think of this. In every African country, there is shortage of a minimum of 1 to 2 million houses. 1 to 2 million houses. If you provide solution to construction, housing, electricity, all these things, you have great potentials. Let's talk about the real debt to GDP ratio of rising African countries and their European neighbors. Somebody say, look at Spain. Now look at this. The United Kingdom is the best standing in the whole of Europe. What is the debt to income to GDP ratio there? 91%. Let me explain GDP. Gross domestic product. When we say gross domestic product, we are not talking about your income. We're talking about the total turnover of commerce produced inside a country. Everything. When you analyze this debt to GDP ratio to your personal finance, it's talking about my debt to bankers, to people, against my salary. Against my salary. You have bought houses here, I'm sure. I'm an American trained in financial services. If your debt to income ratio is 35%, they consider you a bad debt. If it gets to 40%, nobody will give you loans. When you reach 50%, they give you debt counseling. The best in Europe is at what? Hello? At what? 90%. France, 93. Spain, 93. USA, 97. The USA has crossed 100%. This was done in 2015. You hear about Belgium, Italy. All the banks in Italy are having issues. Why? Because of the debt ratio. 133% means it's not possible to come out of debt. There's no system in the world that would help any country that is above 100% to get out of debt. It's not possible. You have Greece, 175%. That's why when the World Bank and IMF was giving Greece loan 4 years ago, they said, we know Greece will not be able to pay back. So we're going to give them loan and give them the money to pay the loan.
Because we already know that they are not going to pay back.
I like my brother here. They know that we give you money, you have no ability to pay back, so I'll give you money and I'll give you money to pay me back. Is that not fraud? It's fraud. Now, let's look at the African rising stars. Algeria, 13%. Angola, 14%. Nigeria, 19%. Gabon, 23%. Rwanda, 23%. South Africa, that all of you run to, is the most broke country in Africa. 45%. Now you understand the reality of the global economy. It is a sham. That's why the blockchain industry and the cryptocurrency is the future. If you are not playing on the blockchain and you're not playing with the cryptocurrencies, you are going to lose in the new digital economy. So as CTOs, even if you're not anywhere interested in all these things, begin now to find opportunities in these industries because there is no going back. Let's go further. This is your debt to GDP ratio map of the world. 100% is the worst case. Green is the best case. Every time you get a map of the global economy, you will see this map showing Africa in red, showing Europe and America looking beautiful. The reality is, go and check my numbers, they do not lie. I'm trained in the United States of America with the best NILAC University in financial services. And I work with New York Life Securities and I work with World Financial Group. You would understand that the problem of the world is the 1% that control the world economy will not allow you to know the real facts, because if you know the real facts, you will not be a profit center. This language I'm using might go above people's head. A profit center is a place where revenue is generated. Every individual in the new economy is a profit center. That means when you eat, I make money. When you're sick, I make money. Even when you die, somebody makes money. In America, they call it debt task, estate planning. That's another day's teaching. Let's look at the green areas. Russia, Central Europe, Australia, Africa, Latin America. The Western countries are really needing help. Because your debt ratio is so high, they are unsustainable. So the European Union president asked that Europe and Africa sign an economic bloc to have free trade among each other. We need more than political statements to create a healthy environment for the economies of Europe and Africa. That's why I call it a symbiotic relationship. Africa needs Europe, Europe needs Africa. This is the US debt clock. This is more than 2 hours explanation, but I have only 15 minutes left. Look on the top left. The US national debt is how much money is there? 22 trillion. Some of you cannot even go trillion. 22 trillion. Next to it is the debt per citizen, 68,000 per citizen. Just next to it is 182,000 per taxpayer. That means you went to school, you started a job, you're paying taxes. At 182,000, your average salary in America is 30,000. Even if you don't eat, don't do anything, paying your debt, you need about 6 years to pay it off. And the savings culture is 5 to 10%. Now look at the income. The federal tax revenue is the income. 3.4 trillion is the income. The spending is 4.4 trillion. Income 3.3, expense 4.4. Meaning, at the minimum, every year you borrow 1 more trillion. I don't want to go further. I'll give you this data. Remember, my job is to bend your thinking. Bend your thinking. 6.1 trillion is the deficit gap. 6.1 trillion every year in the budget is a deficit.
This is the first economy.
If you are not thinking out of the box and you're going to follow this economy, you will hit the brick wall very soon. Very soon. Now, let's go further. I just took one of those rising stars and juxtaposed the economy against the European economies. These are the Nigeria GDP in 2014 was 548 billion. How many of you thought Africa was one country? In America, most people think. One country, Nigeria, which is the biggest economy, it's 540 billion. The map tells you it should be among the top 10 economies of Europe. How many people in Africa are running to Nigeria? But they're running to Czechoslovakia. They're running to Romania and Bulgaria, looking for greener pastures in an economy that is broken. We need to change the mentality of the Africans as we need to change the mentality of the Europeans. So my job here is to just bring a broader picture of Africa to you and to help you plan towards making your strategic planning on entering Africa in a partnership with African players. Our goal is to reach people in remote areas using mobile apps, technological innovation to bridge gap between Africa and the global community, starting with Europe. This presentation gives an insight into some of the many opportunities in the continent. You have to ask your teams these questions. Is the invention solving problems? Is it adaptable to the African scenario? Is it affordable? Is it a need or a want? How can it be delivered to the end users? And is it user-friendly? Some of you know these things already. But I'm just going to highlight one thing. I am playing in the blockchain. I'm working with the cryptocurrencies. I am transferring. My company is called Emerging Market Specialist. That's what my profile is on LinkedIn. That means I find technologies, and my job is to adapt it to Africa and make the maximum impact. When you make impact, you make money. Zuckerberg gave us Facebook. Facebook in Europe is a want. In Africa, it is not a need. Did you see the difference? People in Africa need something to eat, shelter, clothing. They need the necessities. The number of people who are going to play on the Facebook in Africa is less than 10%. So Zuckerberg and Facebook are investing in so much about infrastructure, connectivity, electricity, so that they can bring in the African data into the global big data. If you play in Africa right now on the data, you can compete favorably with the whole world. Data is what your computer is going to need to talk to each other. Data is what your artificial intelligence is going to need. Data is what you're going to need for you to do AI. Analytics and anything you do is about data. So the biggest gold in your industry today is Africa's data. So we are telling people, think about Africa. I'll do a case for rural connectivity because I lead an organization called Greater Tomorrow Africa Initiative. Our philosophy is diasporan Africans from all over the world, we need to come together and strategize with our European and American partners to make changes that are lasting and making impact in Africa. And one of the biggest problems is connectivity. If we're going to do AI, we're going to do blockchain, we're going to do connectivity, Alphatech has Sina software for all the digital platforms in the health industry. But if you don't have connectivity, one hospital cannot talk to another hospital. So we are tackling the number one case that is needed, which is connectivity and Wi-Fi. So look at the information here. The mobile phone is in the forefront of technological innovation in Africa. Penetration rate is growing rapidly. From 2017, there were 444 million African users. The penetration rate is 44%. This figure is projected to grow to 634 million users in 2025. That's almost the population of Europe or more. That's the growth on this platform. All the technological inventions you're doing, if you're not thinking on the application being on a mobile device, you are losing a huge market. So as the CTO, okay, let me say this. The CTO is the architect of the future of your company. You are actually the most important person in the digital economy in your company. The CEO might get the big check and the big position, but the CTO determines the future of Africa, of your economy. Gig Hubs and Alphatech have a partnership. I don't know their levels now, but I dare to predict that in the next 10 years, the digital arm of Gig Hubs and other things will be at the forefront of Alphatech Group. Why? Because innovation and free thinking gives limitless possibilities. Think out of the box. Mobile data is about to create 150 billion in sub-Saharan Africa alone by 2025. But perhaps the most important thing is the ability of this technology to be used as a platform for innovation, personal identification, and a banker. Your bank is not going to be a brick and mortar in the future. It will be your mobile application. We're talking about voting on the blockchain, which is going to change the leadership of Africa. Once you start voting on the blockchain, you wouldn't have malpractices in elections. The right leaders will lead in Africa, and Africa will emerge on its own. They have enough smart people. Financial inclusion. In partnership with global partners, you credit cost of money. If cost of money is not at 25%, today in Europe is 2.5%, in Africa is 25%. These two people, when they produce a product, the profit margin is already paid to the banks. Financial inclusion is when Africa's economy begins to get money at competitive rates. You need to invent. I love the brother that was from Brazil. He created the application and his company grew tremendously in about 2-3 years. You have the same potential in your growth if you tackle Africa's problem in the finance, in the technology, mobile phone, and all these things. Education. Okay, sorry. You can do a lot just by using a technology of telephone and mobile internet to create education in rural areas. You can work on these platforms if you want to. We should create synergy between East-West, North-South Africa economies with Europe and try to trade among ourselves for a greater economic independence and the continent we call home, Africa. God bless you. Thank you.
That was amazing.